This week on Mastering Dungeons, our main topic is draw steel combat encounters. Previously, we've talked about making characters, we've talked about the basics of combat, we've even determined who goes first. So now it's time to draw steel. We have gained initiative, Teos.
We have.
We get to decide who on our side of the table gets to go.
Yeah.
I say you. I say
Okay.
I'm not quite ready
All right.
yet. I'm still looking at my character sheet.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
not completely familiar with this game.
yeah. And that
You,
is a
you take your
fun
turn.
that is definitely a fun part of this game and Daggerheart as well, is that whole, as a group of players, not being overly polite, not being endlessly tactical, and just, okay, one of you decide to go. And on your turn, you can take a main action, a maneuver, and a move action. 3 M's. And
Mhm.
you could also end up with triggered actions, either on your turn or on someone else's turn, if the right conditions are met.
Mhm.
So let's talk through those 3 actions. Main actions can be one of your cool class abilities. Monsters have signature abilities as well. Sometimes they have additional abilities. And these things can be, and tend to be big, cool, awesome things. This team has definitely learned from 4th edition, the MCDM team, with absolutely awesome names to all their powers. And we shared some of these examples last time, but things like Halt Miscreant for the censor, who is like a paladin, right? Just always like great names. And then there's a little blurb that describes you infuse your weapon with holy magic that makes it difficult for your foe to get away. And it's a main action. It tells you what it targets, what the range is. And then you roll that power roll we talked about last time. You're going to roll these 2d10, and I got a 14. So that's the middle result. And so that's, 5 plus my might and holy damage. And then if my presence score, my bonus is, if the the target's presence is lower than my bonus, then they are slowed save ends. And that's the kind of thing that a main action can do, but it can do a lot of very interesting things, right? I might hit somebody and grant somebody an attack, or I might shove people back or have a big AoE blast, but they tend to be big, bold, dramatic, cinematic powers that are going on as your main action.
And then we get into the maneuvers, which are often more tactical in nature. You'll see things like aid someone else's attack, or take a recovery, or grab something, or knock someone back. Uh, you might have a class maneuver, such as the tactician being able to give or move every ally in an area. So this example maneuver from the tactician is called now with an exclamation point. It costs 5 focus to use. Your allies wait for your command, then unleash death. So this is a ranged maneuver within a range 10 of you, and you can target up to 3 allies. So what happens? Each target can make a free strike, and we talked about free strikes last time. Those are like from 4th edition, 3rd edition days, your basic attack. But you can, on your turn, have 3 allies do this thing, and that's not even your main action, right?
Yeah, and there is
Abilities. Yep.
I was going to say that there is a lot that's interesting in the list of maneuvers that you can do. That, like, you can do the knockback maneuver to just shove somebody, and because shoving, force movement can deal damage, that can be a big deal, to just as an extra little tack on kind of thing. So if you don't have something specific to your class that is an actual ability, you likely have a default option that's pretty cool. And then you have those kinds of hard choices that a system like this presents. Like in the game I was running on Tuesday, the monsters, the ghouls, could kind of leap on you and throw you to the ground, and there was no, this just happened. And so then the player had to decide, well, do I use my maneuver to stand up, right?
Mhm.
So instead of spending half your move, what you do in Draw Steel is you spend a maneuver to stand up, and now, but that ate up your maneuver, right? And as we said before, a main action, or I think we'll say it later, but a main action being turned into either a move or a maneuver, but nothing else converts. So you'd have to then not attack if you really need your maneuver.
Right. There are some things that are free. So you could, if
Yeah.
the tag free is on there, uh, you get to do it without counting against the limit of once per turn.
Yep.
So if you had a free maneuver that you used, you could also take a maneuver uh, that passes the once
Yeah.
per turn
I guess that's true. Yeah. I
action.
think you're right. Yeah.
And
And then,
then
yeah.
we get triggered actions.
Yep.
So the shadow can do something called clever trick. You sow a moment of confusion in combat to your enemy's peril. So this costs one insight for the shadow to do, but it is triggered only when an enemy targets you with a strike. Then you get to, as the effect, choose an enemy within distance of the triggering strike, including the enemy who targeted you. That strike targets that enemy instead. So, as a triggered action, you could have an enemy that had hit you with a club, have them club themselves.
Yeah. It's great. I love it. And triggered actions are a big part of excitement. Like, you can cause them a number of ways to come off, and you might crit with them even, which is really neat. As we talked about, I think last time we said that a crit will give you an extra action. So that's really amazing when it happens on or off your turn, right on a monster's turn.
Right.
It's also worth saying with the move that you do, usually you're going to do what's called advance, which is just spend your speed to move forward a number of squares. But you can do other choices like disengaging to not provoke a free strike from moving away. It can include riding a mount. And you can break up your move around your main action, as most modern RPGs tend to allow these days. So you can move, do a maneuver, move another square to your main action, right? So you can do that, which is kind of neat as part of a tactical game.
Yep. And it's important to remember that this is a very tactical game.
Yeah.
So we do get rules under movement for things like not being able to move diagonally around a hard corner. So,
Mhm.
like, if you were trying to move diagonally around a statue, if it was round, you could do it. But if it's squared off, you would
Yeah.
have to take that extra 5 feet of movement to go fully around the corner.
Yeah. The corner of a
And
building. Yeah.
you expect that in a grid-based game. As Teos says in our notes, you would be astonished by the level of detail on rules for burrowing,
Yeah.
rules for climbing onto other creatures. But you can tell the designers of this game are players and game
Mhm.
masters. Because if you've ever game mastered for more than, a single table of people, you know that as soon as you get out there into the wider world and you've run for 20 players, there's going to be one that wants to jump off the thing. There's
Yeah.
going to be one that wants to ride the larger character. There's going to be people wanting to throw other people at each other,
Yeah.
right? There's all of these things are there. And so they are making rules that do that.
Yeah. Can I burrow under them? And then do I have cover protecting me? But then also, can I just attack them without any cover? So these rules
Yeah.
are sometimes surprisingly exhaustive, particularly around burrowing. I laughed at how thorough they have been with that. And there is an action you can take to pull somebody out of the earth who is burrowing right below you. You're like, stop doing that. Come up here, which I think is great. And so there are a lot of these interesting rules: cover, flanking, damaging terrain, high ground, force movement. And so that is, as much as those exist, I will say I did not find in our play that we had to look them up. They were
Mhm.
pretty intuitive, and these kinds of situations didn't come up a lot. They also felt a lot like other games we'd played. So when we did look them up, we were like, yep, we were right. Okay, keep going.
That's cool. I want to pay special attention to this idea of forced movement.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's interesting in the sense that it's a lot of powers, a lot of characters are able to do it in one form or another. But they can also be used to damage creatures if a creature is pushed into another creature or an object, and there is still movement remaining. And I think since this isn't highlighted in its own special section, right? This is just sort of a subheading of movement.
Sure.
that things may get lost. But when I was playing in the D20 Play game that Tom Christie ran for us, I was playing a troubadour. And even at first level, I had an ability, a maneuver called Power Chord.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, okay, this is cool. I get to push things around. Maybe that's, and I'm like, wait a second. Didn't I read in the rules that if you push something into something else? And so I took great pains to try to see if I could tweak, like power game this a little bit. Well, sure enough, one of the battles, you are set up on by a bunch of minions, and behind them is the main bad guy. And so I moved right directly up to this line of minions that were in front of me with the bad guy directly behind those. And I used power chord. And sure enough, I got a 17 plus, meaning I get to push these every character within two of me,
Uh-huh.
three. So minion one, I get to push three, pushing it directly into the bad guy. It does a point for every damage or every space that it couldn't move. So that's three. So I did 3 damage to the minion, which killed it, but also 3 damage to the bad
Boss.
guy.
Yeah.
So then next I push another minion. And I did this with like 4 minions, smashing them into the, so I'm doing 12 points of damage to the main bad guy with just 4 minions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to do it again because it's a burst two. So I get to push the bad guy back one, and then the creatures that were around I get to push again, knocking them into. If it's if you are pushing it into an object like a cliff or a
Mm-hmm.
wall, it's 2 damage plus 1 for each square remaining in their force movement. So now I'm doing 2 plus 3
Yeah.
to certain creatures. So this is just the maneuver, right? This is like your not your main action.
Yep.
And I'm doing
Yeah.
literally 30 points of damage
Man.
as a whole. It's like a fireball going off. Now it takes time to do every creature, especially if you're surrounded by a bunch of these creatures. But it is a very powerful thing not to be overlooked in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a substantial part of play, and it does appear to be intended, given that you have that knockback maneuver as well. And there are things like in the Delian Tomb, one of the early experiences you have is a room with a big area on the ground that pushing creatures onto it damages them. And in fact, two of the rooms can sort of have that effect. But one of them is directly, shove them into this, and they will take more damage and on top of everything else, and both the monsters do that to you and you can do it to them. And sometimes it's intended. You've got these minions, and minions can be really interesting because sort of the point of them is to all get beaten up and die pretty quickly. Right. And so this forced movement does enough damage that you're tracking against one pool. It might even kill several minions, right? But you're going to start ticking away at that pool, and when you reach certain intervals, then one dies. And it's a neat system. And it can be a lot of fun, but it is certainly a mentality of being like, okay, this is truly intended by the game, and ping-ponging things into each other and having the joy of sort of saying like, wait, I shouldn't push this one into this yet. First, I should push into this guy, then this guy here, then that one will push into the other. And that sort of 3D chess, right, is can be very fun as long as everybody's looking for that kind of experience, or okay with having one player have a lot of fun for a bit, and now it's your turn to have some fun, right? Like it can be, not everybody will want that, especially if what you really want to do is just talk, role play, and not, strategize. If you're that kind of player, then you may struggle a bit.
Right. But again, this highlights the very tactical nature, which the game right up front says it's tactical, and they deliver the goods to make it that.
Yeah.
Teos mentioned critical hits earlier, but let's take a step back and look at exactly what that means. Whenever you make an ability roll as a main action, and the roll is a natural 19 or 20, which is a total of 19 or 20 on these 2d10 before adding any characteristic scores or other modifiers, you score a critical hit. What does a critical hit do, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. Does it deal extra damage? No, which might surprise you. what deals extra damage is having a double edge. But a critical hit does allow you to immediately take an additional action after resolving the current power roll. Whether it's your turn or not, or even if you are dazed. So
Yeah.
if somehow you make a critical hit on a main action, even if you have this condition that is supposed to not allow you to make those, you can still do so.
By the way, I have to go back to Daggerheart. So switching games here briefly, but
Mhm.
when we were playing Daggerheart the other day, apparently everybody at my table has listened to you talk about how you could not get a crit the entire game with a character that was
Mhm.
made to crit. And this came up every single time someone at the table
Yeah.
rolled a crit, which was all game long.
Yeah.
So apologies for all of us having fun at your expense, Shawn, but you
Hey,
may think you'll
that's what I'm
never
here.
crit, and then sometimes
Yeah.
it's a ton of critting all the time. It was very funny.
Yeah. In the Daggerheart game I ran, speaking of that, it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like everyone scored a critical hit at least once, everyone I played with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, that's, 10, 15 rolls per player over the course of these two
Yeah.
sessions. But everyone got that feeling. Everyone got that chance. And I was going to sit down and do the math on what a critical hit, how you would get a 19 or 20. I could probably, if I really sat down, I could do it in about 4 minutes with enough scratch pads.
Well, there's a
Uh,
dice roller we could turn to too. Um,
yeah, but it it hasn't happened a lot for me in the games I've played of Draw Steel. Not me personally or anyone else that I've been playing with. I have not seen that.
yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So greater than or equal to 19 on two 10-sided dice should be 1 in 33 is what it looks like. I ran
Okay.
this calculator correctly for a draw steel.
Yeah. So 1 in 33 is not
Mhm.
heavy.
No.
That's what 3%.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so wait, in D&D it's a 1 on a D20 or
Yeah.
1
5%.
out of 25%. I feel like I ran the numbers for Daggerheart and it was more than 5%. Uh,
Yeah. It was a
but
little higher.
it was like 6 or 7%. Uh,
Yeah.
but that might have been for a previous rule set too. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Playtest version. But what do you think? What do you think about that? Especially with people who are used to D&D, where they
Yeah.
see that critical and they get all excited and they're like, okay, what does
Yeah.
that mean? Double damage, maximum
Right.
damage. It doesn't affect damage, but it lets you do something
Yeah,
else.
I think this is actually better. I
Mhm.
think it's fine that it's a little less often because you're already doing a lot on your turn. But when it
Mhm.
happens, it is very big. It can be super dramatic. Like in fact, one of the most dramatic moments is when it happens on a triggered action off turn because you're often hoping like maybe I could do enough damage to kill it as it provoked an attack of opportunity, and now you get to actually take two attacks on it. Like you might actually drop this thing, right? Or have some ability that'll do some interesting thing like daze it. So it can be a really, really big deal. And same thing with even when it's on your turn is it can be a very dramatic thing. It was dramatic and fun when it happened at our table. I remember at least one crit we had that was really nice. But it's a big deal because it could be an AOE burst, it could be a ranged attack, it can be a lot of things to just take that main action, and you could convert it to a maneuver or a move if you needed to. So it could be tactical, right? I needed to get to the lever. Oh look, I crit on my attack. Now I could convert it to a move. So that's all really neat. I think it's a nice, big, bold kind of thing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if the feel of it
Mm.
is
I
something that players might bounce off of if they're used to a different critical
maybe.
hit feeling.
But I feel like, third edition, when you crit, felt really, really glorious. And there was
Mhm.
something about the level of damage you were dealing relative to monster hit points that it felt like a really big deal. In fifth edition, it doesn't always feel particularly impactful.
Mhm.
It's certainly fun and it happens, a little more often, but I feel like it doesn't always matter. And there's also things like
Mhm.
if you killed the creature, well, nothing happened, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was already dead. It had 3 hit points and you crit it. Well, great. It's not like
Yeah.
that damage is going to go somewhere else,
Oh,
right? This game gives
yeah.
you rules for that of like, well, if you crit the minion, all
Yeah.
that damage is going to kill all these other minions, right? And
Yeah.
lots of
No,
different.
I totally agree with you. I think it's very, very powerful.
Mhm.
I just don't know if someone who
Yeah.
doesn't think it through would say so.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Just an interesting question.
Yeah. It also might be like, wait, now I got to sit and look at my character sheet and figure out what else to do.
Yeah.
you know, when you're early on, it could be a little surprising, but I know I think I like it a lot. I think it's a pretty neat idea. And
Yeah.
crits take us to the topic of taking on a lot of damage because, of course, crits can happen on you. And damage is a really interesting mechanic in Draw Steel. I don't know if you want to spend some time, switch to that topic.
Mhm. Yeah, we could go in any direction that you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. So when you are rolling, your 2d10 and you're getting one of those 3 tiers we talked about, that's going to determine how much damage you do. But then you also might do like you just talked about, you push them. And so that's more damage, or you set them on fire, or give them a condition, knock them prone, things like that. The damage part of it can often feel like it's small numbers. But then, as we described with your pushing, it can all add up in ways that you're like, oh, wow, that actually was a really big deal. And any creature that reaches half their stamina value, they are considered winded. That is like being bloodied. It doesn't, in and of itself, mean anything. But monsters and heroes may have features that use that state, right? When I become winded, this triggers, or when I'm attacking a winded character or creature, then this happens. And what gets really interesting and different than D&D is if your stamina is reduced to 0 or lower and you're dying. That set of rules is, to me, very fascinating design piece. So the first thing is you can't use the catch breath maneuver in combat. So I'm dying. I'm, let's say at -2 hit points or stamina. I cannot just take that catch breath maneuver and gain my recovery value.
Yep.
Only somebody else healing me will help. I am also now bleeding, and that bleeding condition can't be removed until I'm not dying. So someone would have to heal me up past 0. While you're bleeding, you take 1d6 plus your level in damage. When you use a main action or triggered action, or make a power roll that uses might or agility. So it could be that your maneuver or something else, even a triggered action, or a triggered action, but even a maneuver, if it involves a power roll using might or agility, would cause you to take this damage. And if you reach your negative winded value, so negative half your stamina, you will die. And you otherwise get to take your turn. So it's this really neat thing. And I got to see this last game where a player was below 0 and they continued to act. In fact, this happened twice. One of the characters died, and it was very interesting to see this. Like you're still taking your turn, but you're dealing damage to yourself. And one of them was quite dramatic because they rolled the d6 and rolled too high on that d6, and that took them out, and they were dead. So new character next session.
Yeah, so many thoughts on this.
Yeah.
So many thoughts on this. It solves the problem of, oh, I'm at 0, right? I'm just gonna have to sit here and make death saves, and hopefully somebody will heal me, or I'll roll a 20. And otherwise, I'm just gonna sit here and check my phone. You get to act, and there's consequences for acting.
Yeah.
I love that you can't heal yourself. The initiative system becomes super important here, because otherwise all your party rolled really well. So you all went first. Now all the monsters get to go. The very first monster is the main boss. The dragon comes down, bites you. Oh, now you're at -2. And all of the kobold minions now get to act. With the system that's set up, there's ample opportunity for not only one of your allies to go, but the ally that needs to be the one to heal you
Hmm.
can say, I go next.
Yeah.
All right. So in a game where you take damage a lot,
Hmm.
that is very important to have happen.
Yeah.
It's important for you to be able to use your recoveries many often during a battle and have people able to trigger those recoveries for you
Yeah.
to keep you up. If you go into this with the mindset of I'm not going to take any damage or I'm not going to take a lot of damage,
Yeah.
you will quickly be disabused of that notion in this game.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
there's it's really hard to avoid taking some damage. Um and often in fact you might take some damage to the point where you might adjust your tactics. Like we had one person who was particularly fighting, from behind the corner kind of thing because they took a lot of
mhm,
damage early on and they were very worried about it. I don't want to be down, to where I
yeah.
can't be effective and I'm a liability. So, yeah, it is very interesting tactically. Mhm.
Uh, to look at it in terms of Daggerheart, which
Mhm.
I'm now more familiar with having played more recently, you also take a lot of damage or have the potential to take a lot of damage in Daggerheart. Uh, Now you get to mitigate that using your armor slots
Mhm.
or other abilities that let you mitigate it. But before long, you are a lot of the times taking at least one damage.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
and so it's these armor slots, it's the resting that is the mitigator of that. It's not necessarily a spell. It's not necessarily you waiting for someone else to heal you. It's
Mhm.
it's in your hands. And then whether to rest or not becomes a huge deal,
Yeah.
especially at tier one, where you might have 6 hit points and 3 armor slots, right?
Yeah.
If you take 2 hit points and you've used 4 armor or 2 armor slots, you have 1 armor slot and 3 hit points left. Deciding to go on is a big
Yeah.
question.
One of the games we played on the D20 Play channel for Daggerheart, we ended the session with basically everybody out of armor slots. And what it
Mhm,
really meant is if we fought one more, even small
mhm.
battle, we're going to die. Like, because
Yeah,
you can't reduce it. And so every hit is just
mhm,
damage. And you only have like 6 hit points, right? And so
right.
if you've been taking that thing that happens is there's a double effect that's happening in Daggerheart. Spending an armor slot, only taking 1 damage. Well, you only had six
Mhm,
hit points. So when that happens 3 times, you can be at half for some of the pre-gens in the level 1 adventure.
yeah,
Having been hit 3 times, you have half your hit points and no more armor.
mhm.
3 more hits, you're dead, right?
Or
Even
one more
weak
hit.
hits, right? And it could be
Right.
one more hit. And so
Yeah.
that is really substantial. And then the mechanic in Daggerheart around when you die is this sort of you either get to just lay low and be on the ground. That's the safe
Mhm.
bet. Or
Yep.
roll to see if you either die permanently or, well, other than magic, die
Yeah.
or spring back up, or go
Yep.
out in a blaze of glory and sort of sacrifice your character. And that's a very
Yeah.
different, yeah, very different way of handling it.
For very different, very tactical on the draw steel side, very right
Yeah.
storytelling,
Yeah.
lots of choices that the character gets to decide on the Daggerheart side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. There's some really interesting, comparing the two is really super fascinating. And you have to, when you're playing both, which we are doing, it is a very interesting difference to see these play out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it creates different behavior, it creates different approaches, and the party needs to approach it differently. And same thing with D&D, right? It's a very different approach.
Yeah.
One of the things that often happens in D&D is those 3 death saves. Seldom do you see anybody heal somebody when they're down, unless they can do it with an easy bonus action. We got lots of spell
Yeah.
slots, nobody cares. But a lot of times it's that idea of, well, I know you're getting close to dead, but I really think I might be able to drop this creature. So I'm not going to go over there
Right.
and give you a potion. Maybe the cleric will get you. And what you talked about with the initiative turn order, then becomes this
Right.
situation where by the time you get to the cleric's like, well, I really should do this other thing.
Yeah.
And so the player just sits there waiting till next round to see if something changes. And yeah,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, they could get unlucky and get hit with a crit
Yeah.
and die.
I've said this before. The most deaths I've seen in D&D from any particular cause is not like massive hit point damage.
Hmm.
It's the natural one on the second death save,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we've got three. Maybe they'll roll a 20. Maybe they'll at least stabilize on their own. They've
Yeah.
only failed one, so we've got time. Whoops, natural one,
Oops.
two death saves failed, and off we go.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Or
and
the
and that's
incidental damage
assuming,
that counts as a crit, and then you're like,
yeah,
"Oops." Hmm.
and that's assuming that the DM doesn't just go and hit you while you're down, which is a completely quote unquote legal way to handle it. Although some players might say, storytelling wise, that's sort of cruel
Yeah.
to do. Although the threat of it is fun.
Yeah. So, Shawn, I'm wondering, we've gone a fairly decent amount. Do we want to talk about ending combat, recoveries, resting and victories as part of maybe downtime in a next episode?
That sounds like a wonderful plan,
Cool.
Teos. It's almost like you know what you're doing here.
I mean, I've done this one 262 times, or not quite, but something like that.
So
Uh,
around that number.
let's see, what is my personal number? I think 150. So okay, there we go.
Yeah,
So,
look at that.
but yeah, it feels right. It's been really fun to chat through the way this all works. And then next time we can talk about the fascinating part of resting that goes with all that damage and almost dying.
For sure. So let's close this down by saying thank you so much to all the listeners out there. We do this for you. We really do. We'd love to share our insights and our information and our joy of gaming, and we love it when we hear back from you. So you can always email us, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. You can send your question, your comments, your thoughts to masteringdnd@gmail.com. You can also support us by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/masteringdnd and support us via that medium. There are many people that do, and we appreciate each and every one of them. Some of them are Master of Dungeon supporters, and thank you for that. Some of them are Master of Realm supporters who get their names and their links shared in our show notes. And we have the Masters of the Multiverse, and they are here for this. Agile Monk of Fantasy Companion Workshops, Keith Ammon of The Monsters Know What They're Doing and Making Enemies, Lou Anders of Lazy Wolf Studios, Craig Bailey, Rudy Chainsaw Basso, Dave Bastianson, Derek the Bearded GM, Steve Bissonette, Merrick Blackman, Calvin Bridges Avalos, Robo Balland, Kevin Criswell, Dead Inertia DM, Evil John, Evan at Nimbleco, Will Doyle, Andy Edmonds at nerdronomicon.com, James Fisher, Vedwokles G, Scott Fitzgerald Gray at Insane Angel Studios, Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, Sean Hurst, Hyperlexic, the Jaunty Mantis TTRPG Podcast, Mark and Mary's Gaming Compound, The Mighty Jerd, JL at Tileforge, JR of the Twilight Perspective, JT Evans, Brian King, Jim Klingler, Gal Cormendi, Chad Lynch, Paul Mata, the Mathemagician, Jaron from Mathis Arcanum, Eric Mengi, Annabie Meyer of Fantasy Cartography, Trey McLemore, John Mickey, Sean Molly, Falcon Neal, Tom Nelson, creator of the Deck of Player Safety, DT Norris of DT and Dragons, Phil Wirt from the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, Philip and Lindsay, Frog Prince at Tentacle Squelching Wetly, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Ricardo Who Might Adventure, Robert Pasley, Vladimir Prunner from Croatia, Ozymandias Rex, Runner Rick, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Andy Shockney, Krishna Simosa, Tim Smith, Spark from Dunner Games, Jeff Stevens at jeffstevensgames.com, Josh and Lee Wanika of the Tabletop Journeys podcast, Talis the Stormlord, Jeremy Talaman from the D&D and TV podcast, Tres, Ryan Truk, Joe Tyler, Marcelo de Velasquez, the Valiant DM, James Walton, Graham Ward, Jason Ward from Accidental Cyclops Games, Javier Waziak, Waterford Wizard, Chris Webster, Zach Types, and Z. Walt Winfrey. Thank you so much for listening and for being a patron. Again, you can go to patreon.com/masteringdnd to join the ranks of those named heretofore. Also, if you get a chance, leave us a review anywhere you listen to this podcast, whether it's on Apple, you can go to Apple Podcast or anywhere. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get to see these beautiful faces and give us comments and the thumbs up and all of that happiness. Teos, I know that you have nothing going on, so you must be working on something for your social media.
I'm taking a bit of a break, but you can catch the latest video, which was comparing the complexity of Draw Steel, Daggerheart, and D&D, where I looked at level 1 characters, 2 characters, and 3 characters to see which systems are most complex and think about that complexity. And I compared them against Pirate Borg and Shadow Dark, and I had the immense joy of finding out that the Shadow Dark fighter never increases in complexity. It gets features that are totally static. So it stays at 4 things to track. Its entire history is just done, unless it gets a magic item.
Amazing.
And that was really amazing. So then you compare that against Pirate Borg, where you usually get 1 thing per level, and then D&D and Draw Steel. And it was surprisingly close. Like, to me, I was surprised by it. And now you could get into the quality of those things they can track, but just looking at number of things to track, there was a surprising amount. And even the, like, say the battle master isn't really different than the champion in terms of these like number of things to do. It was very interesting. I thought so. Hopefully, folks are enjoying that video. And and then I'm so looking forward to seeing everybody at Gamehole. It's great. There's some get-togethers planned, and I just can't wait. It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah. You can follow me on all the social medias at Sean Merwin. But if you're going to be at Gamehole Con, please do come up, say hello. Let us know that you listen to the show. We love that. Love to sit and chat about those sorts of things. So I don't even need to ask the question, what are we going to do now? Because I already know the answer to that question. We are prepping our tails off for this amazing Gamehole Con. So we will hopefully see you there, and we will see you next time here on Mastering Dungeons.